What up YouTube, Salvador Brigman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. And today I want to talk about regulation crowdfunding and specifically the statistics surrounding regulation crowdfunding. I want to give you a better idea of the types of companies that are using equity crowdfunding. What are the funding amounts? What are the success percentages? What should you really know if you are interested in either raising money yourself with equity crowdfunding, maybe you're a consultant or you're an agency in the industry. You want to get a better feel of who you can be helping and just get a sense of how the market is doing, because regulation crowdfunding, it was only enacted in May of 2016. So it was very recent at the time I'm making this video. So I want to give you a better idea of that. So the first thing I want to say when it comes to regulation crowdfunding is let's look at the first 100 campaigns that have gone through this entire new set of regulations. So for those of you that are new to this, basically regulation crowdfunding, regulation CF, and Title III of the Jobs Act are all the same thing. This was all made available to entrepreneurs to raise money under this new set of rules in May of 2016. And by looking at the very first 100 companies that have passed through this set of rules, we can get a sense of who is using it, what kinds of companies out there are successfully raising money. And you in the audience, you might get a sense of if you can also join this new group of companies using equity crowdfunding to not only get financing, but also to reach out there to a whole new crowd of people. So the first really interesting statistic that I want to talk about when it comes to like the first 100 campaigns is looking at the majority of companies. In fact, 33% of the companies that went through this new set of rules are in the category of technology, internet services, and mobile app companies. So 33% of the companies that went through regulation crowdfunding fall into this category. Now, of course, every single industry under the sun is represented in this set of the first 100 companies, but 33% are what we think of as tech startups or technology startups. And I just think that's really exciting, because that is exactly what I and many other people in the industry thought the types of companies that would benefit from this new set of rules. These are the new potential Ubers, the new potential Facebook, or the new Googles, the types of companies that can start very, very small and over time grow into a massive tidal wave, a massive force that can disrupt industries and that can create entirely new industries as well. So that's really exciting to me. One of the other statistics that kind of stood out to me that was a little bit weird, honestly, was the fact that 8% of the companies, the first 100 companies, were actually in the category of beer, spirits, and alcohol. So this could be companies that are serving that industry or they have products in that industry, but 8% of those initial 100 companies fall into this category. And don't get me wrong, like I love beer, I love an occasional glass of scotch, but I'm not an expert at all when it comes to this industry. So I was kind of like, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, why is it that these companies are seeing so much more growth and using these rules much more than other ones? So I would love to hear from you. If you have any knowledge of this industry, if you have any knowledge of like spirits and the different products in that industry, let me know in the comments down below. Why is it that you think that 8% of the companies are falling into that category? I think it could be because traditionally, beers and spirits, this industry has very large entrenched competitors. Companies and brands that have been around for decades, if not centuries. So it can be really hard to break in if you have a new craft beer or a new spirit of some kind. It's very difficult to break into a new industry. So I think having equity crowdfunding actually will enable you to connect with a new crowd of people, and it also gives you access to financing that maybe other people don't have confidence in your business or your company, whereas you can go directly to the people that know and love your product, and in that way you can persuade them to become investors and join you with this entirely new vision of how you're going to reinvent maybe the beverage industry or the spirits industry. So that was a really interesting statistic to me. Another interesting statistic when I was looking at these first 100 companies was the fact that 60% of the companies were in business for 1 year or less. So what this says to me, if 60% are in business 1 year or less, these are really the early stage pre-revenue startups that, quite frankly, I think the Jobs Act was aiming to help get financial capital to. So it's doing its job in that way. I also think that the fact that you usually hear like pre-revenue and you think that that's a bad thing, but really when you're dealing with technology companies, you're dealing with tech startups, it's very, very common that at that stage, 1 year or less, the company is absolutely going to be pre-revenue. Just looking at some of the startups, like Amazon, you can see how you're basically investing in the profits for the long term. You're really building the technology foundation so that you can then have massive cash flow in the coming years, like with Google. Like that's the trajectory of just many different tech startups. So we did see that the majority of the companies using regulation crowdfunding were in business for 1 year or less, and also that they were pre-revenue. And the final thing that I think stands out to me that was also really surprising when I was looking at this set of companies was the fact that 40% of this initial set of 100 companies were hosted with WeFunder, the WeFunder crowdfunding platform. That's a large percentage. To think that WeFunder is making up 40% of the regulation crowdfunding offerings for the first 100 companies, that just shows to me that they're really aggressive. They're trying to be a leader in this new industry or this new niche in the way that Kickstarter or maybe Indiegogo is sort of the leader and the second leader. They're trying to really be at the top of the pack here when it comes to regulation crowdfunding. So that got me way more interested actually in WeFunder. I started to learn a lot more about them and I started to talk more and more with this company. So one of the things that I worked out with these guys is if you are interested, you're an entrepreneur in the audience and you're actually interested in using regulation crowdfunding, you have the money to do a financial raise, to hire help, to hire assistance, to hire legal assistance specifically to deal with all of the things you're going to have to do, like fill out forms, etc. And you want to raise a $1 million amount in 12 months, that's the limit or the cap with regulation crowdfunding. If you are at all interested in pursuing that and you're an entrepreneur in the audience, I've worked out a deal with these guys where you will actually get $1,000 off of the fees to use their platform. Every single crowdfunding platform has fees. Kickstarter has fees. GoFundMe has fees. Indiegogo has fees. Every single platform out there is going to have fees, but these guys are going to give you $1,000 off of your initial amount in terms of the fees to raise money on their platform. So if that sounds interesting to you, you want to gain access to this discount and you also want to help this show Crowdfunding Demystified and the education that I put out there, you can go and use the link down below that will unlock the $1,000 discount when you file your Form C with them. You just have to go through the paperwork, you have to go through the step-by-step process, and then you can launch on WeFunder with this new equity crowdfunding regulation. So if you are interested in that, the link is down below to access and unlock that discount. Now, within these first 100 campaigns, we saw about $40 million in funding volume. This started in the middle of 2016. If we're going to take a look at the funding in 2017, basically the companies that went through regulation crowdfunding, we see about $49 million in terms of the amount of funds that have been raised using regulation crowdfunding. Now, when I was first looking at this and telling my friends about this and other people in the industry, they're kind of like, wow, that's kind of like a paltry amount. When it comes to venture capital dollars or even angel investment, $49 million is not a lot of money. But at the same time, I then started to go back into the stats and into the statistics when it came to other companies, other platforms in the crowdfunding industry. And kind of what I discovered was that many platforms that we now consider to be gigantic and enormous and huge, like Kickstarter, started out with very paltry amounts as well. It really started out as just a few people interested in this new funding medium. Some companies were launching, some investors were interested, but really, as it started to go, we started to see more and more people gaining awareness. And eventually, it sort of led into a snowball effect where everyone was starting to get interested in Kickstarter. Everyone was starting to get interested in these new companies. We also started to see large financial raises, which sort of embrazened or emboldened other entrepreneurs that this opportunity does exist. So I think that while only $49 million was raised under regulation crowdfunding in 2017, we're going to see much more than that as time goes on. As lawyers become more familiar with these new regulations, as entrepreneurs also start to see success stories, and investors get warmed up to the concept of investing in a new startup, which could be the next Dropbox or the next Uber, I think we're going to continue to see more and more growth as the years go by. In terms of success metrics, I've been asked a lot about like what are the success percentages for an equity crowdfunding campaign. On Kickstarter, it really does vary depending on the category that you're launching under. So certain categories might see a 20% success rate. Other categories might see a 30% or even a 40%. Some niche crowdfunding websites, you might get as high as 65% just because they're extremely curated websites. When we're talking about equity crowdfunding, what we've seen thus far in 2017 is that there's about a 40% success rate for equity crowdfunding campaigns. Now that's likely going to change. That's going to be variable based on the category you're launching on. I'm just talking about aggregate figures to give you an idea. So when you hear only 40% of the campaigns that launched an equity crowdfunding campaign were successful, you could think, wow, that's not really a lot. But when taken in context of crowdfunding as a whole, it's actually a pretty healthy percentage. Like that's actually doing pretty well. You're not going to see 70% success rates or 60% success rates when it comes to equity crowdfunding. Most likely not. We do see some other, campaigns, if there's some social element to them, that they have very high success rates. But in aggregate, I think that 40% is a really healthy number to start with, and that if you are interested in learning more about the industry and you go out there and start to Google different success rates, you'll be surprised that actually 40% of equity crowdfunding campaigns were successful. Now, the final thing that was interesting to me when looking at the first year and also 2017 for regulation crowdfunding was that the different states that were involved in the funding efforts and also that were where the companies resided in. So we're pretty much focused exclusively here on the United States. I'm living in the United States. Also, you can't really talk about the crowdfunding rules in different companies different countries because that gets really intricate and complex. So we're just talking about the United States. Within the United States, the states that saw the most companies launching and raising money under these rules were New York, Massachusetts, Texas, and California. I don't really think that's a surprise given the fact that these different states have a lot of business activity. They have tech startups that are launching new companies. I think that in order to bolster the number of projects we're seeing, we need to spread more and more education to different states in the United States. We need to have more people who know that this is an option, more entrepreneurs and more success stories so that other entrepreneurs can get interested in equity crowdfunding. I think we're suffering from an education problem. And I also think that it'd be really awesome if the actual Title III rules, regulation crowdfunding, if they improved the cap. So it wasn't like $1 million in a 12-month period, but more like $5 million or even $10 million. That would also really bolster growth of more companies using equity crowdfunding. But I would actually love to hear from you. What do you think? Do you think that improving the cap would help? Do you think there needs to be other changes to these rules? I would love to hear from you in the comments down below what you think in order to bolster the growth and have more companies adopting equity crowdfunding. Now, the final thing I want to leave with you is that I have a very exciting announcement. I am working on an entirely new guide, a new book on equity crowdfunding that's going to be called Equity Crowdfunding Explained. I'm going to be going into the really nitty-gritty of how to actually launch one of these campaigns, the different regulations you need to be aware of, the different forms that you have to file, the various legal stipulations, and also the service providers and the companies in this industry, as well as the major platforms that you should consider. Just looking at the first year here, I think the major ones that stand out to me are WeFunder, our Start Engine, Micro Ventures, which is Indiegogo's equity crowdfunding arm. We also saw a lot from things like Nextseed and also Seed Invest. Those are the top 5 companies that platforms that did really well with regulation crowdfunding, with WeFunder really leading the pack there. But I want to talk about more. I want to talk about the best practices for getting the word out, the advice that I have for actually building a crowd, for getting a bunch of people interested in your company and in your offering, and really using this not only as an opportunity to get funding, but also a marketing and a PR opportunity to put your company's name and brand name on the map. So I want to share all of that with you, as well as some other stuff when it comes to equity crowdfunding. If you are interested in that guide, I have a link down below which will link you to a pre-order. Basically, you just enter your name and email, and I'll let you know when this new guide is available on Amazon. It's going to be a very low-cost guide. It's going to be all the information and knowledge that I have when it comes to equity crowdfunding. So whether you are an entrepreneur looking to raise money, you're a consultant or an agency in this industry, you want to learn a little bit more about how it works, the statistics, all that kind of stuff, or you're an investor and you want to gain access to the next Dropbox or the next big company, the next Groupon, the next company that's going to explode, the next living social. I will also go through ways to make sure that you don't lose your shirt when you're getting started with equity crowdfunding, that you do it intelligently, that when you're putting your money into these different companies, you're looking at the right signals when it comes to a startup that's really going to take off and see acceleration and growth. And a lot of these things are commonalities, quite frankly, of the people that I've had on my show that have seen a lot of success with crowdfunding. So I'll wrap this video up by just saying very quickly that if you are interested in learning more about equity crowdfunding, of course, take a second to subscribe to this channel. Go and check out some of my other videos on equity crowdfunding. And finally, if you do want to take advantage of that $1,000 discount offer, where you'll get $1,000 off of the fees that WeFunder charges for you to run a campaign on their system, on their platform, and gain access to that marketplace of investors that they have. If you want that $1,000 discount, all you have to do is go down below, check out the link, and start the process of filling out the paperwork and eventually file your Form C with these guys, and then you'll be able to go live on their platform and raise money from the crowd. I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. My name is Sal, and I'll see you next time.